Everybody, welcome into another edition of To The Point podcast. Word of the day for To The Point is panic, because there is some panic around the NHL right now. Multiple teams either are panicking or are going to start panicking because something's afoot in certain markets. There are injuries, there are losing streaks, there is divisions, it's divisive. Panic is going to start in certain markets, and we're going to talk about it all today. Lots to get into today. NHL news revolving around panic. We got recap of Major League Baseball last night. We have NBA started up last night. Some interesting first two games, some interesting news and notes from those two games. We got other NHL news. We got the winners and losers of NFL Week 6. NFL Week 7 gets going tomorrow with the New Orleans Saints. We'll be visiting the Arizona Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins will be active for the Cardinals as he's exiting the suspended list, as I like to call him, Mr. Injection, following his performance-enhancing drug suspension. So Mr. Injection, DeAndre Hopkins, will return to the Cardinals lineup tomorrow night. Robbie Anderson is a question mark after being traded on Monday from the Carolina Panthers. So all that forthcoming. Friday, Walker Campbell will join me. We will do our Big Money Friday. We'll get into all things gambling. Going to ask him about his Washington Capitals start to the season. Well, I'll talk to him about his Lakers, who had a less than inspired start last night against the reigning champion, the Golden State Warriors. We'll get his thoughts. We'll talk some over-unders. We'll do some things of that nature involving hockey and basketball as well. So I have an interesting conversation with Walker on Friday afternoon. But I mentioned today you start the show with panic. And I was going to start with a team that played in, I like to call it a panic game or the panic bowl, if you will, last night. But we're going to get to them. We got lots of injury news today around the NHL. And there are big injury news, and there's news that teams can do an Aaron Rodgers and relax. So let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because let's start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They announced today that Jake Muzzin was put on the injured reserve, not long-term injured reserve where you missed 10 games or 24 days, no matter what happens first, on the LTIR. He's on the injured reserve following his neck injury on Monday night. And I'm sure the running joke on Twitter is, well, it's not that big of a loss to me. Good joke. Didn't hear it about 80 times after the game, but good on you for creativity and sticking with that joke. However, Jake Muzzin is hurt. They're without Carl Dahlstrom. They're without Jordy Ben. They are thin on the back end. So Jake Muzzin is out. They recalled Philip Kral. And I assume, but they haven't announced this yet, that Timothy Liljegren will be inserted into the lineup after he missed the start of the season due to a training camp injury. Jake Muzzin being out for the Maple Leafs is not a panic situation. Two extremely different reasons. One, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a good hockey team and they can afford to lose him. Why? Because they have Morgan Rielly, because they have TJ Brodie. Neither of those two defensemen are number ones. Morgan Rielly is a serviceable number two. More of a number three, if you ask me. But again, Leafs Nation loves themselves some 44. He's a solid number two defenseman. They've had him forever. He's good to get to the first round of the playoffs and lose. But he's a good defenseman. He's very good. And when you have a strong first pairing, this gives an opportunity for Rasmus Sandin, who was sitting out but then didn't sit out to start the year, and now he's playing. And oddly enough, he's been really invisible through the first 4 games. But if you ask me, for a small defenseman through 4 games, and I haven't really noticed you, can be a good thing. That's lost on people on how to play defense now. You're just solid, you just make good plays, and you don't have any points. But That's still a positive game for me. That's still a game that can be rewarded. Might not be on the stat sheet. Maybe your grandfather will like that he's a +2 through 4 games, whatever he is. I don't know his plus minus because I don't care. But all I know is watching the first 3 or 4 games of the Leafs season, I haven't noticed him. That can be a positive thing. He gets more playing time. Liljegren gets inserted. You need to, again, you have 2 guys you drafted in the first round. I don't think either of them are first-round talents, but that doesn't mean they can't be good NHL players. It gives an opportunity for those 2 guys to show what they can do, period. So that's a positive. So basically, theory, synopsis, let's break it down. They can withstand missing Jake Muzzin for an extended period of time. They got Dallas. It doesn't matter who they're playing. Toronto's a good team. They can outscore their opponent. They'll win games with or without Jake Muzzin. They did last year. They have in the past. Playoffs, that's a different story. Now, there's another reason this could be a positive story, and there's multiple angles to this. And this might sound crude, but you know me well enough. I don't mind being crude, and I don't mind getting into the lurch. Let's say Jake Muzzin has a season-ending injury. It's a neck injury. It could be a concussion. He's had multiple of those, and he's not able to play anymore. Maybe it's a career ender. I'm not hoping for that. I'm going to say that right off the bat. I am just hypothesizing. What if this is what happened? What if he can't play anymore? Let's go down the path, shall we? Well, Jake Muzzin makes $5.8 million for another, I believe, 4 years on his deal. That's an albatross of a contract. That's not something Leaf fans like, and to be fair, his play is not warranted Leaf fans loving Jake Muzzin. So, in theory, Jake Muzzin goes on long-term IR. It opens up $5.8 million in salary cap space for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, in theory, they could acquire a new defenseman that is an upgrade over Jake Muzzin. That's the positive side here. Again, this is a gruesome angle, but you got to explore every angle. I got to talk about all these angles because they could come true. It could be what happens. We'll have to wait and see. Now, that could be a solution where you bring in a defenseman that you think's an upgrade, but there's also a catch-22 to that. Jake Muzzin does something that no other Leaf defenseman does. He plays with a physicality. He plays with he'll throw a check. He'll have some bite. No other defenseman on the Leaf roster does it. If there is anybody, come at me. Tell me who it is. I'll debate that with you all day. I'll debate the color of the damn sky. Tell me which defenseman plays with any kind of bite. I'll wait. If Jake Muzzin is out of the lineup, who is Kyle Dubas going to replace Jake Muzzin? Who's going to be the replacement for Jake Muzzin? Is it going to be somebody like Jake Muzzin? Or is it going to be somebody like Rasmus Sandin or TJ Brody or Timothy Liljegren? Somebody along those lines. A puck-moving, skilled defenseman that doesn't bring any kind of physicality to the table. Well, if I look at the way Kyle Dubas is drafted, if I look at the way Kyle Dubas has built the team, I doubt the Jake Muzzin archetype is brought into Toronto. I would reckon that it's not a physical defenseman, that it's somebody who is a little brittle, is a guy that doesn't like to get checked. It's somebody that will finish with 40 to 50 points, and you think he's great, but then you get to the playoffs and you have nobody. Somebody gets hit and they quiver, they fall, and they're out of the playoffs before you know it, as Leaf fans so vividly know. There's a lot of angles to this. Some Leaf fans might say Jake Muzzin being off our books would be the most positive thing in the world. I can't say I completely agree. I can't say I completely disagree. At times he plays terrible. But if the solution is we're bringing in a better version of Jake Muzzin, I'm all for it. If the solution is we can trade for Jacob Chychrun, okay. He's a better power play defenseman than anybody got in your roster, right? He's not a physical player. Who is? You going to play Jordy Ben in the playoffs? I doubt it. Wouldn't surprise me. He never plays a game as a Maple Leaf. Liljegren, Sandin, all these guys, none of them bring a physical presence. This isn't 1984, good novel, but it's also not a time where in the playoffs there's no hitting. It's not Leafs Monday night game at the library at Scotiabank Arena where you don't hear anybody. The crowd's quiet and there's no hits and you just play the game, you go home. Grab your slice of pizza, your $16 beer. Before you know it, you're on the GO train and you're back in Scarborough. This injury is not a concern immediately or too much down the line. But if Jake Muzzin is out for an extended period of time and his replacement is brought in and it's not somebody that is a brand name or that can help the roster right away, that brings what he does to the table, this team won't win either. Why? Because their team up front is too damn soft to do it. Case in point, as I predicted yesterday, Dennis Malgin is a healthy scratch tomorrow night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He plays on a line with John Tavares and William Nylander. Not exactly the most feared line in the National Hockey League, although that line has been their best line so far this season. So Dennis Malgin, who's, I'm joking when I say this, but 5'6", 170 pounds, probably not that far away. He comes out of the lineup and you think, well, who are they going to insert? Somebody that has any kind of physicality, somebody different change of pace? No, let's insert Nick Robertson, who's 5'8", 185. Well, that'll scare you. Nick Robertson, the chosen one. He had a good training camp. Good for him. He gets to play tomorrow night against his brother. Good storyline. Again, I said this was going to happen. It erases the loss to the Desert Dogs. You forget about it. It's now the Robertson battle, and we move on. Good job by Leafs PR. Credit to them. But is Nick Robertson the answer? No. Should he have made the team out of camp? Sure. Him and Dennis Malgin are interchangeable because they're both. Dennis Malgin should be playing for Bern in Switzerland. We should see him be playing in the Spangler Cup, which we might later in the season. Anyway, this whole ordeal is much about nothing. This isn't a panic situation for Toronto, but it can be a problem down the line if they don't address it the right way. Which, do I trust Kyle Dubas to address team building the right way? I don't. You can listen to Chris Johnston and have his theory that Kyle Dubas is building the perfect team. He should be extended because he's basically on the payroll for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's building something special. He's unwilling to change, and this year he's even more all in because it could be his last year in Toronto. Well, one thing I do know about Leaf fans, there are a lot of blue-collar people. There are a lot of blue-collar Leaf fans. None of them go watch the games because they probably can't afford to get in there. No offense. But all the people that go in are white-collar. They're fancy. They're at their suits. They don't scream at games. But there are so many people that are hardworking, good people that love the Maple Leafs. They aren't prim, proper. They aren't 5'6", $160. They love their Ty Domies. They love their Fraser McLarens. They love the guys that gutted Gary Roberts, the killer. To think you go from Wendell Clark and now your second line winger is Nick Robertson. Sure, the game has changed, but something that won't change is playoffs. The intensity, the battles, that doesn't. Leafs Dallas tomorrow. We'll see that game tomorrow. The Robertson battle. Way to go, Leafs PR. I credit you a ton. Washington Capitals announced that Connor Brown will be out long-term, extended injury. He might need surgery, got injured Monday night against the Vancouver Canucks. This isn't a panic injury, but it's one that is concerning for me. The Washington Capitals are thin everywhere on their roster. Connor Brown was a good trade because they needed him. They needed him to play wing and play a big position on this team, be a penalty killer, be a guy that works hard for pucks, and fill that Zach Hyman type role for the Washington Capitals. They're already without Nick Backstrom up front. TJ Oshie is banged up already. They needed him. He's out an extended period of time, puts more pressure on Ovechkin, puts more pressure on Evgeny Kuznetsov, who's suspended for tomorrow night's game in Ottawa. And relying on a stupid player like Kuznetsov is a dangerous game. Let me put it this way. When you're relying on Kuznetsov, it's like relying on a drug dealer to take $100 from you and go buy the groceries. Are they going to go buy groceries? Or are they going to go buy their supply? Are they going to go get their fix? What's your guess? You give Kuznetsov the keys to the car. You give Kuznetsov, we say, we need you to be a big player this year. All I know is since they won the cup, he's been an abject failure for the Washington Capitals. He's made stupid decision after stupid decision. He takes stupid penalties, and he gets suspended for a frustration play on Monday night. You don't give an addict money to go buy groceries. You buy them groceries. You don't give them the money because you know where it's going to go. The more people that leave the Washington Capital lineup, the more likely Evgeny Kuznetsov is going to be relied upon to be a difference maker. I don't like that. Don't ask addicts to buy groceries. That is something to take away from today's podcast. Connor Brown, not panic, but I do think it's an important injury. Colorado announced today that Gabriel Landeskog just underwent knee surgery, and he is going to miss the next 3 months. That'll take him into the new year, and he obviously won't play his first game of the 2022-2023 season until 2023. And I thought about this one a lot because I knew he was missing the start of the year. He had gone through a hell of a grind in the postseason, and now we know the extent of it. He's had multiple surgeries since winning the Stanley Cup. I don't think the Landeskog injury is a panic injury for Colorado, and the reason I say that is because they have a very deep team. Up front, they got McKinnon. You have Newhook. You have Nikushkin, who's off to a great start with 4 goals. You got Mikko Rantanen. JT Compher's a good player. Your back end can score with anybody in the National Hockey. Scoring goals is not a problem in Colorado. Now, keeping pucks out of the net might be. Georgiev and Rocco with the fake eye, as Jeff O'Neill likes to call him, Pavel Francouz, that could be an issue. Plus, your defense is a little leaky. In particular, Sammy Girard. So I don't love their defensive play, but Landeskog doesn't have the biggest impact on that. This team will not, they'll miss him, of course. He's a great player. He's the captain of the team. But they will not fall out of a playoff race because they don't have Gabriel Landeskog. This is very similar to me of that of Nikita Kucherov. Nikita Kucherov missed an entire season. Tampa still made the postseason. They still went on to win the Stanley Cup. Landeskog may return in mid-January, potentially February. He'll have months to get ready for the postseason so that they can try to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. Now, could this injury affect their placement whereas St. Louis, who I like a lot, could jump ahead of them, potentially finish first in the Central? I wouldn't rule that out. I think the Blues are right there with Colorado in the Central. I like the Blues a lot. They've only played 1 game so far, which is crazy. Season is 8 days in. They played 1 game. They got a game tonight against the Kraken. So second game of the season for St. Louis goes tonight in Seattle. So I think this could push Colorado to potentially second in the Central Division. But I don't see it. This isn't a panic because this team is good enough to absorb that injury. They'll score goals. Nikushkin will step up. Compher will step up. This team steps up when they lose pieces of their team. Guys find a place. They find success. Colorado has Winnipeg tonight. Interesting game. Interesting. In Winnipeg's 1-1, Colorado is 2-1 on the season. So both teams really getting settled into the year for the both of them. So interesting game this evening for both clubs. Now, there was an injury announced today that is a panic-inducing injury for me, and this should be an alarm for the organization. It was announced today that Aaron Ekblad of the Florida Panthers was being put on long-term injured reserve for an undetermined amount of time. This is a panic situation for Florida. He was hurt in their game Monday night against Boston. I remember the play. He threw a hit. He came up awkwardly. He actually finished the game, but he just didn't look right after that hit. Ekblad is the best defenseman on the Florida Panthers roster by a quarter mile. Aaron Ekblad is a former first overall pick, and the biggest crime in his career are injuries. I believe Aaron Ekblad would have won a Norris Trophy already if it hadn't been for injuries. He's a high-level offensive defenseman. He plays with bite. He's got such high compete level, and he's just such a stabilizing force on the back end in Florida. Florida, as we all know, have gone through a transition. Ben Sherratt's no longer a Florida Panther. Mackenzie Weegar's in Calgary. He's no longer a Florida Panther. And their defense core is thin. Gustav Forsling is there. They have Brandon Montour, although Brandon Montour is injured as well. He's not playing tonight against the New York Islanders. They have Mark Stahl, who I just talked about should be out of the league at this point because he's playing horrible. Defensively, this team is not good. Gudas is slow. They don't have a whole lot of depth on the back end that you're excited about. The reason I say panic is because this team is not good defensively already. I've seen that through the first number of games. Their goaltending is spotty. Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky. They should be better than they are, but both guys just don't seem to want to be a number one goaltender anymore. They let in goals that make you shake your head, and they also allow a high number of high danger chances every game. Sound the alarm if you're Florida. Now, Darren Dreger did say today that they don't think they'll trade for a defenseman. It won't be that long. But I'm telling you, if you miss a month, it's a big deal because you're missing 10 to 12 games. And you're playing in the Atlantic Division where you got Toronto, you got Tampa, who is 1-3. They're off to a slow start. But you got Boston, who looks good. Ottawa's improved. The Atlantic is the division where you don't want to miss a really important piece. The Matt Murray injury isn't sound the alarm because you have Samsonov sitting there. You have a guy who's equally as talented, equally as good. There is no replacing Aaron Ekblad. He plays 25 minutes a game. There's not a quick fix. In the past, in Ottawa, if Thomas Chabot got hurt, it is complete anarchy. It's panic because you had nobody. Now you have Jake Sanderson. It's not quite as bad as it used to be. Florida, it's going to be defense by committee. But I don't love their defense squad with Aaron Ekblad. It's such a crime because I'm such a fan of him. I think he's such a good defenseman. Great Canadian. I think he would have been on Olympic teams through the years if NHL players were allowed to go. But injuries have really cut into his playing time. He missed the playoffs a few years ago because he got injured late in the year. He missed half a year last year because of injuries, and now his third game into the season, he's injured now. I mean, Gustav Forsling is a good defenseman. Offensively, he's creative. I imagine he'll jump on that top power play unit now. But there's not a whole lot you love about this defense. It's about survival now for the Florida defense more than thriving. Looking at this, you got to look at goaltending. They take most of the pressure. And I look at the forward group. I'm going to talk about this with Ottawa later. But if you know you have a weakness, back checking and being present is so apparent. It's so important for these teams. You know your team's weaker. You know you don't have your number one guy. Be present defensively. Be in the right position and back check a little harder maybe than you would have. I don't worry about that with Matthew Tkachuk. Sasha Barkov's one of the best defensive forwards in the NHL, period. But looking at those bottom of the lineup, Hornqvist, Luosterainen, Lundell, you're great on the penalty kill. Do it 5-on-5. Limit scoring chances for these good teams. Shot blocking. Be in good positions. Know where your man is and just be present. Florida's got the Islanders tonight. They got a good team to play. Playing in the Atlantic, you have a tough schedule. There's no real gimme game. Look at my Sabres. They're winning games early in the year. Detroit's 2-0-1. Boston's 3-1. Toronto's 2-2. Montreal's 2-2. These teams compete. They battle hard. They find a way to stay in games. I'm concerned if I'm Florida. And the brutal irony, Aaron Ekblad's going to come back in the regular season soon enough. That's a good thing. But in that time, you don't have the salary cap to acquire a guy that's even a good replacement. Number one, teams aren't doing it. They're not going to trade away a player this early in the season because you still have a chance. You're 4 games in. The bad teams don't even know they're out of it yet. They will in a month, but they don't know yet. The Desert Dogs won the other night. They're still in the mix. It's about survival for the Florida Panthers. Because unfortunately, you have some good players up front. And you have a lot of talent. Matthew Tkachuk looks like a great find so far. You have Sasha Barkov. You have some really good players up front. That's the fortunate part. The unfortunate, you got $14.5 million of your cap in goaltending. Bobrovsky and, of course, Mr. Spencer Knight, who is still young, but he's making a whole lot of money for not much production. You got goaltenders locked up. It hurts you with the rest of your roster. It doesn't allow you to get significant upgrades. It makes you sign Mark Stahl for $700K, and you see him get burned every game. Florida will have a positive stretch without their best defenseman if we see buy-in from that forward group. Luosterainen wants to have more points this year, wants to be more productive. I'm all for it. He's had a really good start, really good player. Anton Lundell, I think, wants to have a really productive second season. Good finish forward. Continue to be present defensively. Because unfortunately, this Florida roster could score their way out of problems last year. They were the top scoring team in the National Hockey League. They had the best offense in the NHL by any metric. They're just not the best offensive team this year. They're good. But Sam Bennett's more gritty than he is skilled. Patrick Hornqvist, Carter Verhaeghe isn't naturally just pure skill. This team is going to work to score goals. I look at this team as a lunch pail team in the offensive zone and in the defensive zone because you're going to need to work to keep the puck out of your net. A challenge. If I'm Bill Zito, I am panicked but you look at your roster before the season and you said if Aaron Ekblad gets hurt, which he does every year, you had to be prepared for this outcome. So, however, I don't think you were prepared for Montour and Aaron Ekblad being out at the same time. Your best 2 defensemen. I'll tell you, it makes their game against Philly tonight a little more interesting. I mean, that game was interesting anyway. Philadelphia Flyers are 3-0. The Philadelphia Flyers have come back from 2 goals down twice this season. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning last night in Tampa Bay. Noah Cates gets his first NHL goal. Travis Konechny's playing well. And John Tortorella is riding high in Philadelphia. Now, do I buy this long term? I don't. They don't have a very good team. They're off to a good start. This happens every year where teams that you don't expect to be that good have a good start. They feel good about themselves. We'll see what continues with this team in Philadelphia, but Philly and Panthers tonight is an interesting game to say the least. See what happens. But credit to the Flyers for being 3-0, for battling hard early in the year. You're without Couture, you're without Ryan Ellis. You lost Rasmus Ristolainen to injured reserve. You're still winning games. Still finding a way to win. That takes a lot of guts. And kudos to the Flyers for putting in that work and having an early season hot start. Now, back to a team that is panicked because of their play and less because of injuries. I mentioned yesterday a game that I just had to watch last night because it was the panic game or the panic bowl. If it was college football, it was the Fiesta Bowl. It's the Mott's Clamato Bowl, that from two teams that don't have good records, but they're playing on a random Wednesday afternoon. You're off work, so you throw the game on the TV. And that was a game between the Vancouver Canucks and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Two teams who started the year 0-3 and were desperate to get a win. Vancouver was so frustrated that Brucey Boudreau healthy scratched Connor Garland, who they signed to a 5-year contract last year, and he's only in the second year of his deal, and he's already a healthy scratch, and they tried to trade him last year at the trade deadline. Sounds healthy. Last night's game was an interesting one, to say the least. If I would have told you that Columbus, who has a terrible power play, no setup, no plan, no structure, no identity, and oh, by the way, they allowed a shorthanded goal, a Columbus team who has players who aren't NHL ready yet, Kent Johnson, hurts me to say, but he was completely invisible last night, had no impact on the game whatsoever. Just had nothing going on through two periods, didn't have any pressure. And I've always told you, this team allowed a shorthanded goal. They were 0 for 4 in the power play. They didn't have Patrick Laine. But no, they win the game in overtime. You would have told me I'm crazy. The Vancouver Canucks last night had a 2-goal lead and then a 3-2 lead in different parts of the game, and they ended up losing it. Why did the Canucks lose last night? Well, couple reasons. Number one, they don't work that hard. Watch the entire game. And they got a lot of problems that come up to the forefront. I look at why they lost. Columbus was more desperate late in that game last night. Vancouver sat back. They had a lead. They had a 2-0 lead. Then they pushed it. They're like, holy crap, it's 2-2. We've had at least a 2-goal lead in every game this year, and we've lost all 3. We can't let this happen again. Newsflash, it did. But they, after allowing 2 goals to make it 2-2, they pressed. They scored a quick goal. Bo Horvat got his second of the night. But from being 2-0 to getting to 3-2, in that span, they played lackadaisical. They played, let's just try to run out the clock hockey with no pressure whatsoever on Elvis Merzlikins or the Columbus Blue Jackets. They allowed Columbus to do what they wanted. Not to mention Columbus, it was multiple plays last night where Johnny Gaudreau, who is creative, extremely creative, one of the most creative wingers in the National Hockey League, he finished with 115 points last year. You can't take that away from him. But also, Johnny Gaudreau is a small forward who shouldn't be coming out of the corner with the puck. There's one thing Vancouver has is big defensemen who aren't that skilled, but at least they're big. You think you put your body on Johnny Gaudreau, you'll come out with the puck. Somehow, You go into a corner with Luke Shen. Johnny Gaudreau comes out with the puck. He pokes it to Boone Jenner. Boone Jenner throws it in front of the net, and Zach Werenski puts it in the back of the net to make it 2-2. In overtime, it's 3-on-3. Completely out of nowhere, a beautiful feed, cross ice. Vladislav Gavrikov beats Spencer Martin, and you make it 4-3. They played lackadaisical. They played with no energy until they felt pressure that they had to. Hockey 101, when you get a lead, you don't just defend. It's a stupid way to play hockey. You keep trying to score more goals so that your lead is even more. You don't just wait back. You don't just play too high, 3 deep because, okay, we have the lead. Let's see if we can hold on to it. No, that's a losing strategy. You'll lose most games doing that. Another problem. Quinn Hughes is a good defenseman. No doubt about it. I think he's got a lot of flaws. But in this case, I look at the Vancouver Canucks defense core with guys like Luke Shen, with Tyler Myers, with a bunch of guys that just Tucker Poolman, who I actually like, who's better than Myers, who's better than Luke Shen, Kyle Burrows. But Vancouver's defense is just full of just a bunch of guys, and then there's Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes is pressing. He's trying to do too much. He's staying out for too long shifts. He doesn't know when to change. He stays out for a minute. His first shift of the game was 1 minute and 48 seconds. Because he doesn't know when to change. He presses. He thinks he's got to do too much because he's on a team full of players that just can't show up and produce. Up front, they got guys. Elias Pettersson is off to a really good start, minus the team. Horvat is playing pretty decent hockey. Vasily Podkolzin is another guy that I love on the Vancouver Canucks. His compete level never stops. He's physical. He'll get in your face, but he's also got some skill wrapped up into that package. This team has good things about it. Structurally, focus on the game is not one of them. To me, I don't know how a team under Bruce Boudreau is playing so tentative, is playing just to go through the motions and hope that we hang on to this lead. It is the first time in NHL history that a team has started the season with a multi-goal lead in 4 straight games and they ended up losing all 4 of them. That is hard to do. Vancouver Canucks fans are extremely passionate, and the best thing I can say about this is that Vancouver has lost all 4 games on the road because they start their first 5 games on the road before their home opener on Saturday night against Buffalo. But it is panic time. JT Miller's losing it. Bruce Boudreau is running out of things to say about this team. All negative. Demko hasn't played well, and you brought in Bruce Boudreau, you fired your coach last year, and you're looking for a change. I get it. You had to get rid of Travis Green. But Jimmy Rutherford and Cami Granado and Patrick Alvin, who are the management core in Vancouver, to be fair to them, they haven't had a full year on the job. Do I think they looked at the roster and loved it? No, because they got Jimmy Benninged. They were put in a situation where Jet Black had built this roster, and it's full of holes. It's full of things I don't like. Now, did I love Jimmy? Did I love the contract signing of Curtis Lazar, 3 years, $3 million? Hell no. Who took a stupid penalty last night, and guess what? Columbus didn't score on it because their power play is junk, but it's still a bad play. I just saw stupid stuff from Vancouver. But I look at Jimmy Rutherford, who's built championship-winning teams in Carolina and in Columbus. Cami Granado, who's new to this business. Patrick Alvin, who's also new to this business. They need time to get rid of some of the crap. You want to keep Thatcher Demko. Elias Pettersson's your superstar, star of the future. Bo Horvat's a pending unrestricted free agent. You have to make a decision on him. But what D do you want returning to your team next season? Quinn Hughes, and that's it for me. I don't want Kyle Burrows playing. I don't want Tyler. Unfortunately, you'll have Tyler Myers because he's under contract. Another bad signing by Jim Benning. Do you want Luke Shen playing on your team night in, night out if you're going to be a competitive team? No, he's a seventh defenseman in Tampa. That's perfect for him, just coming in when there's an injury. Tucker Pullman, okay, sure, you can keep him. But this team is still full of problems. And I see a team that is just doesn't have a big work ethic. I don't think Brock Besser helps because I think he sucks people into the vortex. Kuzmenko was completely invisible last night for the Canucks. Their KHL guy. He scored opening night. Everybody loved him. Since, I haven't seen him. Completely a non-factor last night for the Canucks. For Columbus, you're happy because you win the game. I give them credit for fighting back, but that wasn't an impressive game for them. I thought Gaudreau played phenomenal. He needed to win that. He wanted to win that game desperately last night, and they did. Credit to him. Because I thought he battled last night. Boone Jenner fought a ton. And I like Boone Jenner. He's kind of the heartbeat of that team. Sneaky good defenseman for Columbus. Andrew Peeke, who plays with Werenski on the top. I like Peeke. Haven't watched a whole lot of him. He's a good defenseman. I'm going to keep watching him because I think he's got some good qualities about him. He's a good team player. He makes smart reads when to jump into the play. When he can get involved physically. You know, Columbus, I mentioned Ken Johnson. He looked out of place last night. He doesn't look NHL ready to me. He's just there. He filled a roster spot. Again, it's one game. I get it, but he did not look ready. I've watched Mason McTavish this year. He looks ready to play in the National Hockey League. He's a point per game through his first 4, Mason McTavish. No goals yet, but he's got 4 assists in 4 games. Ken Johnson could go play in the American Hockey League this year, and that'd still be fine. Play the whole year down there. You'll get better. You'll be ready next year. This team isn't going anywhere this year. But Dan Forrest goals ago. He's a young guy. It was his first year NHL goal. Gaudreau played great. Werenski's still a very good defenseman. And overpay, but they had to keep him in Columbus. He is very good. But Vancouver, 4 games with multi-goal leads and you lose all 4. I mean, I don't know what to say at this point. If you're Bruce Boudreau, you're running out of answers. You're like, you guys just need to. My first thought is play the whole 60 minutes. Don't play the first period, get a lead, and then mail it in. That's what they're doing. And they got worried last night because they thought they're going to lose, so they make it 3-2. Then it goes to 3-3. They got a real good opportunity in overtime, but Elvis Merzlikins made a save. It goes back down the ice, 2-on-1. And Vladislav Gavrikov finishes it for Columbus. They win their first of the season. Vancouver's now 0-3-1, which to me is 0-4. You played 4 games, you lost them all. Period. Oddly enough, we just had the panic game, the panic bonanza between Columbus and Vancouver. We are getting another one Thursday night. Vancouver, 0-3-1. Plays 0-3 Minnesota, who are allowing 5.65 goals per game allowed this season, the most in the National Hockey League. 2 teams that haven't won will meet tomorrow night in Mini. Kaprizov's out to a hot start. Kalen Addison, they're scoring goals, but they can't keep them out of their net. Panic game. If the Canucks go back and to their home opener 0-4-1 or even 0-3-2, that is they need to win tomorrow night just to have a positive morale. Because knowing the Vancouver crowd, knowing the way they handle these type of things, it could be their home opener. They could be introducing the players. They might boo them on Saturday evening. Wouldn't completely shock me if they're that negative going into the game. It's only 5 games, but it's also 5 games for a team that has no track record of being successful. And you look at a defense core that you don't expect to be gangbusters the rest of the season. Panic in Vancouver, absolutely. Ottawa, on the other hand, Ottawa gets their first win of the season with a 7-5 victory over the Boston Bruins. It was a interesting game to say the least. We saw a 3-0 lead early in the game for the Ottawa Senators. Their top line of Stützle, Batherson, and Giroux is incredibly dynamic. They had a great game last night, and they're just full of skill. But then you got Norris on another line, and they were going as well. They have a 3-goal lead. But then all of a sudden, Boston makes it 3-3. They battle all the way back. Boston's top guys. You look at the goals for the Sens. First goal is a Krejci goal where he gets a rebound after Hamonic completely whiffs on clearing it out of the zone. It was like a baseball swing from Travis Hamonic. And he lets that one happen, of course. And I mean, I'll say this every damn day I watch Ottawa. Why is Travis Hamonic on this team? Why did you trade from him? He was on the Vancouver Canucks. Just think of what I just said, the conversation we just had about how bad the Vancouver Canucks defense scores. That's where this sack of you-know-what was. My Lord. Travis Hamonic makes a stupid, boneheaded play. Every game I've watched so far, I've watched every Senators game thus far, and he's done it. Travis Hamonic's a cancer. Brutal. I'm sure he's a great guy. I know he's got kids and the pandemic thing, but you're playing like crap. You play like crap. I'm telling you, you play like crap. So you have a 3-goal lead. Then Boston battles back. It's 3-3. All of a sudden, it's 5-3, 6-3. Then it's 6-5. But they're able to bounce back. Get a 2-goal lead, and they hung on to that. My general outlook on this game: Boston loses their first game. Bound to happen. They're on a back-to-back, and Ottawa's got a whole lot of skill. And for Ottawa, they had a home opener where they had a sold-out building. It was loud in there last night. People were excited to be there. Daniel Elferson dropped the puck. He got a loud roar, They were excited last night in Ottawa. It was a really good atmosphere. It seemed like a fan base that was buying in to this team. That's a good sign for them. But also, for Ottawa to win consistently this year, for Ottawa to be at least competitive and to play meaningful games into March and April, they need a buy-in from their forward group. Hamonic, Brandstrom, Shabbat's a good, Sanderson's decent, but their defense core is limited. They make questionable decisions, and they just give up a whole lot of chances. And, oh, by the way, their goaltending is not that great. Even when Cam Talbot returns, he's a fringe starter. Anton Forsberg is a backup goaltender. They don't have Andrei Vasilevsky between the pipes. The Senators are going to have to prepare to play a system like they used to. In 2017, they were one of the best defensive teams in the NHL with guys like Derek Brassard, with Mark Stone, who was always a Selke Trophy candidate. They had Erik Karlsson, but they had Mark Mathot, who was a great defenseman on that team. They played a defensive system that worked. They didn't give up a whole lot of chances, and they had forwards who would come back into the zone and battle hard defensively. They got a lot of skill. Tim Stützle is flying out there. Drake Batherson can do that. Josh Norris can absolutely fill the net. Shane Pinto. You see they get a goal from the fourth line last night as well. This team has a lot of creativity around it. No doubt about it. But to win consistently, you're not going to win 7-5 every night. Okay, yes, you can outscore your problems. That's going to have to be a solution. But also, I want to see the forward group, and this is the same conversation of what I was having in Florida, is buy-in from your from your forwards to come back and give a shit in their own zone. Be present, be available. Other than that, Ottawa's going to have to outscore their issues. I think that's going to be difficult to do nightly because most teams have better goaltending than the Ottawa Senators. Boston has better goaltending than the Ottawa Senators, but Ottawa just had all kinds of momentum last night. They had all kinds of energy. It was a home opener. The arena had feel. The arena is not going to have that same feel in mid-Feb. It's not going to be a raucous crowd in February when it's game 55 on the schedule and you're kind of fans check out during pockets of the season. You got a real good sense of what it was like last night to have fan base that's excited to watch you play, and that's great. That is great. That's positive stuff. That makes you feel really good about your season. But also, you look around and say, we're going to need to step up. We're going to need to give a shit. If I'm DJ Smith, and you see DJ Smith on the bench, he gets incredibly frustrated. Tim Stützle is one of the guys I'm sure he gets on. I love Timmy Stützle. He's terrible defensively. He hangs out a lot by the blue line. He's waiting to exit the zone. He can have a jailbreak before it's gone out of there. It could be in the back of his own net before he's out of the zone. Guys like to cheat. In particular, skilled players that like to get great numbers, they will cheat. And Ottawa has a lot of them on this team. But they're intriguing. They beat Boston, overcome Pasternak having a big night for the Bees, and Ottawa gets their first win. But that's a big takeaway for me about them. But also, when you have a 3-goal lead, it can't be 3-3, and then you can't let teams get back into the game either. Come on. That was interesting last night. A couple more results. Sharks lose to the Islanders. This is a quiet game for last night, but the Sharks are 0-5. Worst record in the National Hockey League. They got the Rangers on Thursday. I don't see them winning that game, so I think they'll be 0-6. When did they win their first game? They got the Devils, who came back from 2 down last night themselves. Jesper Bratt off to another great start this season for the New Jersey Devils. My Devils, or they were last year as I watched them a ton. But Devils beat the Ducks last night. They get a big important victory for that franchise, but the Sharks are 0-5. I knew they'd be terrible. To be fair to the Sharks, they started their season in Prague, Czech Republic. Then they came back, played 1 game at home, and now they're on an Eastern Conference road trip through New York. That's a brutal schedule, and it's the NHL giving it to a team they expected to be terrible. And to be fair, San Jose is. But just so y'all know, San Jose 0-5. Bad team. Buffalo Sabres defeated the Edmonton Oilers last night, 4-2, behind Eric Comrie, who made back-to-back starts, who had 46 saves on 48 shots from the Edmonton Oilers. And Buffalo's on an Eastern Conference Western road trip. They got all the teams this week. They are in Calgary on Thursday. They're in Vancouver for Vancouver's home opener on Saturday. And they started off with a big win in Edmonton against Connor McDavid and co. last night. The Oilers dropped to 1-2. And for the Oilers, you get down again early in the game. And you see they just, I think they're a little frustrated. They're a little snake bitten. They were the better team last night. No doubt about it. But I also look and say, can you get continuous good opportunities, get pucks to the front of the net, score some dirty goals? That's how you're going to be successful. Yes, you have McDavid, but it's not going to work like that every single night. You're going to need to score some ugly goals here if you're going to win consistently. For the Sabres, J.J. Peterka gets his second goal. I love myself some J.J. Peterka. The kid can already play. And the biggest thing for Buffalo this early start, Rasmus Dahlin has 3 goals in 4 games. Not the biggest deal for me. Yes, he's being productive offensively. That's great. He is getting better and better on both ends of the ice. He might be a late developer. He was a first overall pick. And to be fair to him, he was drafted into a terrible situation. But I watch Buffalo a ton, and he continues to impress me. His skating, I think he's got such a great ability of knowing when to jump into a zone. When he's in the offensive zone, he knows when to jump into the play, when to join in, when it's a good opportunity, when to limit that threat of the puck going the opposite way. Great intelligence, great ability to read the play. Rasmus Dahlin has been fantastic for the Buffalo Sabres in the early part of this season. Eric Comrie got the start. I like that as well. He should start 40. I don't think it goes 40-40. You don't split starts this year with Craig Anderson. He's 41. I give Eric Comrie most of the starts. He made 46 saves last night. He should be starting against the Calgary Flames on Thursday. Buffalo has some skill. Tage Thompson can score goals with the best of them. JJ Peterka has a ton of skill. Dylan Cousins got another goal last night. This team has some players up front. They are not going to be a playoff team, but they're not as bad as people think they are. Buffalo will be a team that plays spoiler this year. I think they're going to be a tough out for people. Sabres look pretty good. Calgary played Vegas last night. They are now 3-0 in the season. Vegas lost their first game. Vegas had a 2-0 lead, but Calgary came back to win the game 3-2. Also, through the first couple games, Calgary has the best power play in the NHL via percentage. They scored 2 power play goals last night. Elias Lindholm scored a power play goal. And oddly enough, Michael Backlund got the game-winning goal, his second of the year. Watching Calgary, they are structurally sound. They have one of the best goaltenders in the game. Rasmus Andersson's playing well for Calgary. They have confidence as a team. They were down and they never gave up. In that game, they didn't panic. I like the Flames and what they've done. I think Vegas is off to a great start. Good for them for being 3-0 prior to last night. They lose their first game in Calgary. They play a really good team. No shame there. But for me, Calgary, the way they've started has been really, really interesting. They have a well-balanced team with skill, with Huberdeau, with Lindholm up front, of course. But you got Majanapani and Dubé, guys who have offensive creativity, but also can work for their opportunities. Michael Backlund, who's a perfect number 3 center who can shut down the opposing team's top line, which he did last night against Jack Eichel. So he's got that positive about him, does Michael Backlund. But then also, you have a strong defense core that is better this year. Eric Goodbranson went to Columbus. That was a positive to let him go. Nikita Zadorov's a Chicago Blackhawk. Michael Stone, who they brought back on a PTO, they got brought into the lineup. He seems just to fit in Calgary. Daryl Sutter seems to like him. I like this team. You got Lucic and you got Brett Ritchie in the bottom of the lineup. They got an old school fourth line. Trevor Lewis is very much a Daryl Sutter guy. He had him in LA. He won 2 cups there. He's still on this team. Blake Coleman is a work hard, grind it type player. They're a well-balanced team. They've beaten Edmonton to start the year, and they've beaten the Colorado Avalanche, and they've beaten the Vegas Golden Knights. Those are 3 impressive wins. 3 games, 3 wins against teams that are really good. Stanley Cup champion, a conference finalist, and maybe the most disappointing team in the NHL last year in the Vegas Golden Knights. There's no more impressive 3-win span for a team to start a year anywhere else in the NHL. Daryl Sutter's going to be Daryl Sutter. But this team, I look at this, I mentioned the Sharks. They're 0-5. They stink. LA's frisky. I thought LA would be good this year. I think they win a game last night where Matt Roy, a defenseman you've never heard of, gets the tying goal and the game-winning goal. Gabriel Velarde is off to an incredibly hot start for the Los Angeles Kings. Kevin Fiala's been decent so far, who I thought would have a big year. He hasn't been that great yet. For LA, the best thing I can say is that they're winning. They won in the gimmick against the Detroit Red Wings. They win last night in a very close game They're just finding ways to get points right now. I think LA's frisky. I think Edmonton will get better. They're off to a slow start. Anaheim's no good. Vegas, wait and see. They've had a solid start. Logan Thompson's looked good in the net for them. He made all 3 starts. But Calgary is by far the best team in this division so far. And it's just by structure and the way they built the team. Credit to Brad Treliving. I would have fired him after they lost in the first round 2 years ago. And, he built a team that nearly won the President's Trophy last year. He had Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk at over 100 points. He lost both of them, and he pivoted and might have a better team. Both those players, you could argue, are in worse situations than they were last year. Gaudreau for sure. We'll see with Tkachuk. That Ekblad injury hurts a lot in that category. See how this progresses, but credit to the Calgary Flames for what they've done. Tonight in the NHL, you got Philly going to Florida to play the Panthers. You have the Winnipeg Jets playing the Colorado Avalanche, an interesting game, and you have the St. Louis Blues playing the Seattle Kraken. They'll have a home-and-home. I believe tonight's game's in St. Louis. Friday night's game will be in Seattle. It's either vice versa, but those are the only 3 games on tap this evening in the National Hockey League, but a lot swirling around the NHL, that's for sure. Another sport that tipped off last night was the National Basketball Association. We had 2 games, 76ers, Celtics, Lakers, Golden State. We have a full slate of action tonight. Raptors start their season against Cleveland. We got the Brooklyn Nets playing the Denver Nuggets tonight. An interesting game. We got the Dallas Mavericks playing the Phoenix Suns. Those 2 teams met in the second round of the playoffs last year, where the Suns had their epic meltdown. So that should be a fun game. So a full slate of games this evening. But watching the first 2 games last night, it's one game. You don't take a whole lot from them. I will say James Harden looked really good for the Philadelphia 76ers for a couple reasons. He's starting to get that foul on the step-back 3. He got that multiple times in the first half alone last night against the Celtics. That's worrisome for the rest of the league if the refs are going to give him that call again, because it opens up the opportunity for him to have a 4-point play. He's great at the free throw line. He looks trim. He looks healthy. I thought James Harden played fantastic last night. And I think the Sixers are going to be a really good team. I think the Sixers are going to be competitive the whole year. They got the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow night on TNT, so that's the first half of a doubleheader, which will finish with the 2 LA teams, Lakers and Clippers. Clippers first game of the season tomorrow evening. But I like the Sixers team. They got a lot of depth. They have a whole lot of options that they can throw at you. Harden looked good. Embiid had a slow start to the season. He missed a lot of easy gimmies that he'll want back. I'm sure he's frustrated with today. But I like what Daryl Morey's done in Philadelphia with that team. For Boston, I talked about it yesterday that the Celtics come into this season with a whole lot to prove, even though they made it to an NBA Finals last season. You have a team that lost their head coach for inappropriate conduct at the workplace. You have a team that had a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals, but they gagged it away because they simply ran out of gas, and Jason Tatum's play got worse and worse throughout the postseason. Golden State took that finals from Boston. I still think Boston was the better team, but Golden State walks out a champion for the 4th time. The way the season started last night, it looked like the Boston Celtics were hungry to win. It looked like they were inspired, like they wanted to prove a point on opening night on the solo stage. Jason Tatum came out looking like the most valuable player. I think he wants this award. I think he wants it desperately. He said last year in a piece with Sports Illustrated, and he actually he was doing the interview, and Joel Embiid called, either the interviewer or called Jason Tatum, and Tatum said to Joel, win that MVP this year because it's the only one you're going to get. Meaning that Tatum was coming for it this season. It was a priority for him. And he had 33 last night. He had a double-double. Jaylen Brown finished with 35. The Celtics looked good. Malcolm Brogdon off the bench looks like a really solid add for them. Marcus Smart is always there. Al Horford is healthy. He starts the season in the lineup. With this three-headed monster, they made it to the finals together. They've been together forever. You add Brogdon, who I think will play a bigger role as the season goes along as a distributor in the key moments in playoff games. Grant Williams returns on this team. He's in a contract year, so he'll be motivated to play well, hoping to either get an extension from the Celtics or elsewhere in the NBA. I look at both of these teams. It was not the prettiest basketball. The refs wanted to be heroes last night. They were calling everything. It had no real pace, the game. It was sloppy, bad basketball. A ton of missed shots that you won't see later in the season. Brick after brick after brick from guys last night. But what I can deduce from the game is that Jason Tatum wants to be MVP. He wants to be a superstar. I think he was labeled a superstar last year until the finals, where he just completely crumbled, which is not all the way completely fair because you have to get to the finals. Jason Tatum had to play at such a high level. I was mad at Tatum because I bet on the Celtics after game 1 of the opening round to win the NBA Finals. I bet on Jason Tatum to win Finals MVP, and he failed me. He did. He failed me. I thought he'd do better. I thought the Celtics would win that series. Ultimately, Golden State comes out better. Boston, I think, knows the East is going to be difficult. Philly is a hell of a lot better. I think Milwaukee is still extremely good. What else do I like in the East? Brooklyn, who knows, but they are a threat. They're an extreme threat if they're all together. Cleveland's no joke. The Toronto Raptors are not a laughing stock. There's some teams towards the bottom of the East standings that, Detroit, Orlando might be a little frisky. There are teams tanking in the West that are just openly doing it, and they're going to be terrible. But I look at some teams that are going to have great shooters. They're going to have great ball movement and just a lot of options offensively. It's going to create a great season in the NBA. I thought the playoffs were fantastic last year. Some of the best playoffs in the NBA we've seen in a long time. That Sixers-Suns series went to 7. You had Celtics go to 7 with the Miami Heat in the conference finals. They also went to 7 with Milwaukee in the second round. Warriors and Grizzlies was extremely fun. They'll play on Christmas this year. That should be a fun game. The East is fun. I talked about the West yesterday briefly towards the end of the show. And then I listened to Bill Simmons this morning, who does a great job breaking down basketball with a bunch of smart people at the Ringer, which, by the way, Bill, if you're listening, I'd love to work for you. You should give people freedom, which is hard to come by in the industry. So kudos to you. But I look at the West, and I thought it'd be a little weaker, but, he made some good points. Golden State, on paper, should be better, even if they have guys sit out games because their depth is so good. And you watch them play last night. They are head and shoulders above the Los Angeles Lakers. They have so many more options. Their bench is just so much better with Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman, who looked really good last night. He hadn't played in over a year. He looked great. James Wiseman did, coming off the bench last night. Curry shot the ball decently well. There were some bricks last night. Draymond didn't have a good game for Golden State. I think it's it might be in his head, what's happened. That's a kind of a contract season for him. So I think he pressed a little bit last night to have a good game. He didn't. But I look at their ability and what they can do offensively in Golden State. There are so many options for that team. I look at Denver. That team has so many options with Jokic, who's a 2-time MVP, who can do anything. Bruce Brown, who is a great addition. Bones Highland, who could be a 6-man off the bench if the Nuggets are good enough. Jamal Murray, who's coming back from an ACL injury, but he's young enough that I think it won't bother him that much. Jamal Murray, who was a star player prior to his injury, I expect him to be a star player again this year and help Denver get to the NBA Finals and ultimately win it, because I got Denver winning the NBA championship this year. Also in the West, I mean, the Clippers are kind of an unknown, but I like their roster. They got a whole lot of players that can play. I'll get to my list from yesterday. I mean, I just look at it and, Memphis, I don't think is going to fall off. I think they're good. Phoenix, I had them in the 6 hole. They were the top seed in the NBA last year. And I think their roster is not as good as it could be. Chris Paul is older, and we'll see what kind of psychological damage that playoff series did on the team. But on paper, they're still great. You have Luka Doncic in the Western Conference, who might be the best, right there with the best player in the NBA. Minnesota, my boy Anthony Edwards. So the West is better than what I gave it credit for. And here's a free. If you're listening to this, you're an NBA fan. Even if you're not an NBA fan, you can throw down a bet. Right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, the over-under for the Sacramento Kings is 33.5 wins. Over. The Sacramento Kings are better than that. I get it. They have a reputation of being a really bad team, and that's fair. It's the easiest. It's a lock. I'll tell you what. If you make that bet and you send me a picture of it and it's wrong, I will pay you back your money. Sacramento will win more than it's either 30. It was 32.5 yesterday. Maybe it went up. But it probably hasn't because they haven't played yet. Go tonight, make the bet online over Sacramento Kings, and I'll tell you what I like too. I think it's plus 400 on FanDuel, Sacramento to make the play-in. Bet that as well. That's a lock. 2 locks. Sacramento play-in, also Sacramento over their win total. There's going to be a lot of bad teams in the Western Conference. They're tanking. Sacramento can compete with the Lakers. They can compete with Portland. I think they'll be able to compete with Dallas. New Orleans is also a fascinating team this season because they got Zion. Brooklyn might have New Orleans tonight. Maybe that's the game. Yeah, Brooklyn's got New Orleans tonight. Pardon me. Brooklyn's got New Orleans. Zion's making his return. They got, obviously, B.I. They got C.J. McCollum now. Alvarado, who was fantastic in the postseason last year guarding Chris Paul. It's going to be a fun season in the NBA. We'll talk about it more and more. Raptors, Cavs tonight should be a fun first game for both teams. Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball got what they wanted last night with the New York Yankees defeating the Cleveland Guardians, who had nobody noteworthy. The most noteworthy thing the Cleveland Guardians did was Josh Naylor's idiocy. Had to be a Canadian, doing the rock the baby motion, and they lose. He does this in a game 3. They lose the next 2 games, and the Yankees are on to their 3rd ALCS in 6 seasons. Oddly enough, every ALCS the Yankees have played the Astros. Astros are in their 6th straight American League Championship Series. We'll see what they can do. Obviously, the Astros have won the first 2 meetings in this series. 2019, and then a few years ago, as last season, right? Yeah, last season as well. Might have been last season. Anyway, 3 of the last 6 American League Championship Series have been between the New York Yankees and the Houston Astros. Looking at the game yesterday for the Yanks, why did they win? Their big boy stepped up. Giancarlo Stanton, 3-run homer in the first inning. That's why you trade for him. Aaron Judge gets a dinger in the 4th inning. Their 2 big guys hit home runs. I mentioned you get 3 runs on the Guardians, you're going to win the game. Guardians could only muster 1. They had bases loaded in the 3rd. They scored 1 run. They didn't get any more the rest of the game. Looking ahead to the ALCS, Verlander goes today against Jameson Taillon. That's an advantage. Houston's got the advantage because they can line up their pitching. Verlander, then they'll have Framber Valdez. I imagine they'll go Lance McCullers Jr. in Game 3 on Saturday. But the crazy thing for both of these series, Phillies, Padres, and Yankees, Astros, after the first 2 games of the series, there'll be 3 games in New York, 3 games in Philly. There are no breaks. It's game 1, game 2, off day, then 5 straight days of baseball. If both series go 7 games, after game 2, there is no off day. meaning you're not going to be able to line up pitching. We are going to see bullpen games for these teams. If you can believe that, because of the lockout and because they don't want to play games in November and just the way baseball schedules it. Who does that favor? Well, I look at the Yankees. They got Cortez. He pitched a gem yesterday. They got Garrett Cole, has been fantastic. They got Severino. They don't have Jordan Montgomery anymore. Obviously, they traded him for Harrison Bader, although Bader has been good in the postseason. Do you have a long man that can give you 4 innings and then you can get to your bullpen? That's kind of the question for these teams. You got Urquidy, you got Garcia for the Astros. I favor the Astros in these bullpen games because they have starters who they've converted into bullpen arms. We saw Garcia pitch in that 18-inning game. Jose Urquidy is a starter that is now in the bullpen. He can give you 3-4 innings. I don't see as many options for guys that can do that for the Yankees, not to mention Jonathan Lozoya, Clay Holmes, and Wandy Peralta have all pitched 3 straight games. They're likely not available tonight. The only one of those 3 that is allowed an earned run is Wandy Peralta. He's allowed 1. Clay Holmes is perfect, and so is Lozoya's pitched 6 innings, Clay Holmes 5, and Wandy Peralta's pitched 5 2/3, just 1 earned run between the 3 guys of the back end of their rotation. They've been flawless. Yankees to win this series, to me, they will win because their bats are better than the Astros. Altuve had 1 hit in the 3-game series against the Seattle Mariners. Completely non-existent. Alex Bregman batted .226. Yordan Alvarez did bat .300. He got colder as the series went on. But Yordan is a huge threat. Jeremy Pena is actually a better bat than Altuve at this point. But looking at their lineup, Giancarlo Stanton's won an MVP. Aaron Judge is going to win an MVP. He's also hit the most home runs in a single season in the history of the American League. Harrison Bader had a 3-homer series against the Cleveland Guardians. Gleyber Torres is batting leadoff for. It's still completely puzzling to me. I hate the way they set up their lineup. But anyway, that's the way Aaron Boone's doing it. To me, the Yankees' bats are more impressive on paper than Houston's. I like Verlander as much as I like Garrett Cole. I like Framber Valdez more than I like Nestor Cortez. I like Lance McCullers Jr. more than I like Jameson Taillon. So if the bats show up for Houston, Justin Verlander in Game 1 against the Seattle Mariners gave up 6 earned. He can be hit. He was proven. He's had 1 start in the postseason. It went horrible. Because of the bats, they won that game against Seattle. What do we know about the Yankees? They have guys that can hit home runs to Mars. Also, they have the back end of their bullpen is better than Houston's IMO. Ryan Presley, a little shaky. I like Stanek for Houston. He can give you multiple innings if you need him to. Houston's fresh, Yankees aren't. But what do we know about the playoffs so far? You're fresh, you lose. You lose. Braves are done. Dodgers are done. They had breaks. They had their pitching lined up. They didn't have to worry about a wildcard series. They lost. The Yankees had to go 5. They were sitting and waiting, playing the sorry Guardians. Yankees are going to be tired. They're playing a lot of baseball. But I'll tell you this. You get one of the first 2 against Houston, you are in a really, really good position. Really good position. I look at the Phillies. They've already won one of the first 2 games. They're in the driver's seat. They are. I got a text from a friend. It was Seamus Fillmore last night who texted me. He said, "You got any locks for tonight?" I said, "Take the Phillies." I knew the Phillies were winning last night. Why? Because Zach Wheeler was pitching. That's why. 3 starts. Yeah, he's lost a start, but he gave up 2 earned in that start against a really game. That was the one game the Braves won. He's pitched 21 innings in the postseason. He's allowed 2 earned runs. He's got a 1.89 ERA. He goes 7 innings last night, 1 hit, 8 Ks, 1 walk. Dominant. He had a first inning where he had 28 pitches too. He settled in and he went 7 for the Phillies. Dominguez, Alvarado, quick, game over. See you later. Yu Darvish had 7 innings, 2 earned runs. Really good start for Yu Darvish, in particular for Darvish in the postseason. Nada for the Padres. Couldn't get anything past Zach Wheeler. Phillies did enough. Bryce Harper hit a solo shot in the 4th. Kyle Schwarber hit a 488-foot homer, the longest recorded home run in Petco Park history last night in San Diego. Blake Snell goes tonight. Historically, a really good postseason pitcher. Aaron Nola has pitched 2 games in the postseason so far for the Phillies, 0 earned runs. I got the Phillies winning this series in 6. By that, I would tell me that if the Phillies win tonight and I have it going 6, after tonight you have 3 straight in Philadelphia. That means the Padres would win 2 in Philly. Well, after you got Zach Wheeler and then you have Aaron Nola, you go to Suarez and your pitching gets weaker because your depth isn't as good. Where Joe Musgrove will get Game 3 for the Padres. I think they win Game 3 with Joe Musgrove on the mound. I got the Phillies winning again tonight. They're winning both games in San Diego. I like Aaron Nola. He's a great pitcher. Padres will be motivated tonight, no doubt about it. The game starts in about 40 minutes. But Aaron Nola, Blake Snell, I expect a really good pitching matchup. Padres get a lead, they can win. Because you get to that closer role, Josh Hader's not giving up an earned run. Period. But you got Bryce, you got Schwarber. Bryce is playing like a guy motivated to win a World Series MVP and to win a World Series, so it's not just he's not a loser that was left the Nationals. They win when he leaves. He wants to feel vindicated. He just turned 30 years old. He's a 2-time MVP. He wins a World Series here, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's not a lock if he doesn't have a World Series, if you ask me. His team won when he left. He won an MVP last year. The team didn't make the postseason. You need to have team success alongside individual statistics. What comes to mind when I say that? How about Shohei Ohtani yesterday, now back in Japan, saying he didn't have a real good feel from the Angels this past year, wasn't really happy with the year despite him playing at an unbelievable level. What could that mean? Was he angling to get out of LA? I would. He signed a 1-year, $30 million contract. He'll be free to sign anywhere after this 1 year is done. If the Angels know they're bad, Artie Moreno is trying to sell the team. You could get a whole lot of assets for Shohei Ohtani. You're telling me if the Yankees lose in the ALCS, they won't be motivated to do something dramatic? They won't be motivated to try something different, to zig when everybody's zagging? Maybe it's not bringing back Aaron Judge. Maybe it's getting Shohei Ohtani, who can swing a bat and who can pitch. Adding Garrett Cole and Shohei Ohtani together. The Yankees will look at this situation even if they win the World Series because they're the Yankees. The Dodgers will look at this. You know why? Because they lost in the NLDS to the rival Padres. Tell you what, Dodgers, pretty simple solution. You're paying a whole lot of money to people. Trey Turner, you got to decide if you want to bring him back. I would, maybe you won't. He wants too much money. Justin Turner, club option, easy. See you later, Ginge. We love you. He'll put you in our Ring of Honor someday. Get the hell out of here. Your play's declining. Joey Gallo, team option. You're already gone. Your flight's to Paris. See ya. What else can we do to trim some money that we could bring in Shohei Ohtani to pitch? Oh, yeah, David Price retiring. His money's off the books. See you later, David. Thanks for nothing. All that you did here, which was jack shit. Clayton Kershaw. This is tricky. Who would I rather have? Clayton Kershaw at $25 million, who is free, by the way, unrestricted free agent, signed a 1-year contract, or Shohei Ohtani at 30? Would the Dodgers give up on their man, the 3-time Cy Young winner? Would they give up on Clayton Kershaw at Chavez Ravine? Maybe this is why my dad tells me I should get into management, because I'd be so good at it, because I'm heartless. See ya, Clayton Kershaw. You can still buy his jersey if he doesn't sign anywhere at the concession stands. He'll be in the Ring of Honor with Justin Turner in a couple of years. We'll bring him back to Chavez Ravine. You'll clap for him while Shohei Ohtani's striking out the side in the World Series. All these teams that lost are going to consider drastic action. Dodgers and Yankees are at the forefront of this. The reason the Red Sox, I'm not throwing them in the mix, is because they stink. They need to get rid of some of that crap on the roster to be in a position to be competitive. Dodgers will continue to be. They got Julio Urias, who wins 15-plus games a year. I'd let Kershaw go. I'd let Justin Turner go. I'd bring Trey Turner back at shortstop. He's invaluable. He's a really good piece. I like him a lot. Mookie Betts will still be there, and you bring in Shohei Ohtani. You can have a DH in the National League now. Every game. You'll move heaven and earth to do it. Do I think the Angels love optics of trading Shohei Ohtani to the other Los Angeles team? No. But if you can get a sign and trade with Ohtani that would sign immediately with the Dodgers for record money, and you get the best return possible, then optics kind of fly out the window and teams do what they think they have to do. And they deal with the consequences after. People don't go to games in Anaheim anyway with Shohei Ohtani and with Mike Trout. Mike Trout's more focused on going to the Eagles games at this time of year because he knows he won't be playing in the playoffs. I don't often make predictions on this show. And when I do, I come back to them when I'm right and I come back to them when I'm wrong. This one's, I mentioned the Patrick Kane one. I haven't lost on that yet because trade deadline is in here. I think he's going to be a Ranger. I'm not backing off that take. I think it's a smart take. I think the team should do it. Makes total sense for the player and for the team. Here's a prediction. I predict Shohei Ohtani will be a Los Angeles Dodger by opening day next season. And here's another couple added. Justin Turner won't be. And this one will be tough for Andrew Friedman and the people that run the ship in Dodgerland, Magic Johnson. But sports is about winning, not about keeping people happy or feelings. You don't care about feelings? Losing organizations. Teams that bring people back on legacy contracts and it blows up in their face, and then they're just left paying people a bunch of money, not winning, and the team hates that player by the end of the contract. So it's a lose-lose for everyone. Kershaw will be a Texas Ranger at the start of next season. He will not be a Dodger. He will not play the entirety of his career with the Dodgers. He'll be a Texas Ranger with his former teammate Corey Seager and his new buddy Marcus Semien. Have fun. Maybe they can afford him with Shohei Ohtani, but if it's one or the other, and I got to play, Clayton Kershaw wants $25 million to come back. If he wants to come back for a reduced salary, he wants to come back for $10 million. Okay. You can be my fifth starter, $10 million. You can pitch out in the bullpen in the playoffs because I'm sure as hell not starting you. Because I want to win. Again, not feelings, winning. Move heaven and earth for Ohtani. Trade whatever you have to. Bring him in. He's your DH. He's one of your top pitchers. You have Urias. Buehler will be back eventually healthy. Tony Gonsolin you can bring back. And maybe you sign another pitcher in the offseason to bring into the mix. Pablo Lopez available in Miami. Maybe you can pull off a trade. That's my predictions for baseball. Today's games, I get Phillies winning tonight. Phillies beating the Padres. Game 2. Aaron Nola goes at least 6 innings. Yankees, Astros. I mean, again, the rest teams have struggled. If it wasn't Jameson Tylon, I just have a feeling the Yankees win it, but he's not a good pitcher. I got the Astros winning game 1. Astros win game 1, but we'll see what happens as the series progresses. As I said, the Phillies-Padres game 2 starts in about 35 minutes time. Quickly, NFL before we wrap today. Winners and losers. Winner, Sauce Gardner of the New York Jets. I would say the favorite right now to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Just blowing people up, playing the corner position. He's got a pick 6 against the Miami Dolphins. He's got the best pass win rate when targeted. He's playing fantastic football. Sauce Gardner, clear winner. Another winner for me, the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons, 6 straight wins against the spread, so it's a gambling victory. Also, they're 3-3 with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Arthur Smith's developing a program there. This team has belief. I think they will compete for a playoff spot the rest of the season. They're winning. They're 3-3, and Kyle Pitts is hardly being used in this offense. They got a 10th overall pick, an 8th overall pick, and a 5th overall pick at this receiver, tight end positions, and neither of them are being used that often. Marcus Mariota threw the ball 14 times last weekend, completed 13 of them. They ran the ball over 30. That's the way they approach the game, but they're winning. Atlanta has turned it around. They let Matt Ryan walk. He's starting to have some success in Indianapolis. But credit to them for having success. It looked like a complete blow-up. They are 6 straight wins against the spread. I'll be betting them for a 7th time this weekend. Spoiler alert. Another winner, Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati's won 3 of their last 4. They finally had an explosive offensive day against the Saints. I realize it's the Saints, but we saw this with Cincinnati last year. They woke up. I have far too much respect for Joe Burrow. He's one of the best players in the NFL. So is Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, explosive offense. Defense is what it is. It can hold up. They got good pass rushers when they want to be with Trey Hendrickson and with Sam Hubbard. I think Cincy could go on a run here. I think I had them making the playoffs before the season. I worried about them. I'm starting to feel better about them. I believe they actually play the Falcons this weekend, so go figure. 2 winners from this past weekend meet this coming weekend. Losers, Lamar Jackson. L-Jack, I love you, but you are ruining things for the Ravens late in games. You are a problem, not a solution, and that can't be part of the equation. You have to be solving problems, not creating new ones for a team. Baltimore is a frustrating team. They could easily be 6-0, but they are 3-3, tied with Cincinnati, only a game up on the Steelers and the Cleveland Clowns. Lamar, interception, 2:30 left, fumble with a minute left. You lose to the New York G-Men, and you lose to your former defensive coordinator. That's a tough week. Cliff Kingsbury, one of the worst coaches in the NFL right now, right there with Nathaniel Hackett. I can't put the Broncos every week till they're not a loser. They're just losers, period. No plan. I mentioned the script on Monday, how you script the first plays of the game, and yet somehow you look more discombobulated in the first half than you do in the second half. You have 1 touchdown in 6 first halves this season. 1 touchdown. Kyler Murray had to run for 100 yards this past weekend. You only put up 9 points of offense. No touchdowns on Seattle. Cliff Kingsbury is the college coach who had a love for, I don't know what reason, because he coached Kyler Murray in college. You missed the playoffs. I realize you got extended, but the NFL is a win league. I wouldn't be surprised you're fired because you don't have any credibility in Arizona to prove that you deserve to stay on. And my last loser is the Jags. I had so much faith in the Jags to rebound, to start to bring it back. Trevor Lawrence to be a great quarterback. You've lost 3 straight. You're failing me. and you're just hurting my heart right now, Jacksonville. I don't know what's going on with you, but you are a loser. Everything there is just bad. So, the Jags. I mentioned yesterday Deshaun Jackson, the Chargers should sign him. Well, the Chargers didn't. The Ravens did. So he did get signed. He's a Raven. He's on their practice squad. Will likely play this weekend. Tomorrow, we got hockey games to talk about. NBA tonight, full slate of games to get into. Baseball to recap. And any other news. Might even start talking about UFC 280 this upcoming weekend. So, lots to dive into. Lots to dive into tomorrow on the show. So, I hope you guys all have a great night. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow here on To The Point.